Let's call this meeting to order. This is the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee meeting for Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. It's at 6 p.m. Ms. Lauren, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mack?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Talbert?
Here.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Here. All right. Item 3. Review, discussion, and recommendations of ordinances. New business.
That ain't you.
Yeah, so item A, I think we had a citizen wanted to talk on LP ordinance 20-10, but
That was the and/or on the, Raymond wanted to talk about the and/or on the, when we made the change about the signed plats. And that's what he's, I think that they have taken, they didn't realize, I guess, that the ordinance had changed. And so he wanted to discuss what, some situations that occur that we might want to consider. And so that's just all he wanted to come testify about. So we'll just push him back. He just couldn't make it.
you're referring to where once you close out.
Once the subdivision plat has been
Yeah.
signed, it used to say sign, then we said sign and/or file. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
So,
okay.
so basically, and then it kind of goes to the same situation. You cannot write an ordinance that's perfect. So consequently,
Yeah.
you write an ordinance to address everything, and then there are subdivisions that have already had the lots cut up. So it's a situation, if that exists, just come before the council and ask, for a waiver. But we can't, there's no definitive way
Sure.
to write the perfect ordinance. So, but I think he wants to come talk about certain situations that we could consider, maybe changing the wording, but that's what his discussion was about.
Well, I'm happy to hear him out. I actually like the ordinance the way it is.
Oh, I agree with you.
But hey.
Open to listening to
Yep,
what
absolutely.
anybody's concerns.
All right, item B, discussion of LP ordinance 20-09, type D roads. I think this is the one where the wording, it said residences. We have
It said residential structure.
residential structures.
We wasn't thinking right.
Yeah, and we wanted to, basically, I have a particular road that has 10 businesses on it. And it is dismal. It's terrible, terrible shape. And don't want to pave it, just want to go in there and
Fill those craters
yes,
Yeah.
or bust it up.
and make it
Yeah.
gravel
Okay.
if you need be.
So with the wording on this, Gary, or Shane.
Anybody?
Well, it
got
looks like they struck residential, and so now it says structures, and I'm concerned that somebody might say that, there's an outhouse here, the barn here.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. What if we
Yeah.
said inhabited dwellings?
Well, I just think we need to say 5 residential or commercial structures. And
I agree.
And instead of striking it and limiting it to structures, 5 residential and/or commercial structures. As long as you get to the number 5, whether it be a residence or a business, I think that
It
gets to
could be a mix.
it gets to the
Yes.
same point. So I just think instead of striking residential, put and/or commercial structures and roll with that. So I'll make that motion if everybody's in favor of that.
You don't want to talk about it no more? You
Well,
ready
go
for the
ahead.
motion?
Go ahead.
If you want, I just want to make the motion.
We got
If
the
you want to
motion.
talk about it, you can talk about it. I mean,
But so we can talk about it
Let's
still.
just talk about it real quick. Number one, do we have structure defined in the ordinance somewhere so that people know exactly what a structure is? I mean, what if you had
Residential or commercial businesses?
yeah, and what if you had maybe 4 or 5 structures on one parcel of property for storage or something? I mean, I
Well,
know
they
it's
gotta
kind
have
of hard to
separate
make.
address, so
Did-
remember we had to have 911 addresses.
wait a second. Lauren, on
Just
section 58, does there have some definitions within that section or whatever? We're gonna look to see, Shane, if there's some definition within the thing that talks
I mean, it
about.
sounds good to me, but I mean,
We don't want to be back here doing the same thing. Is that what you're saying? I'm with you.
What we
Well,
here to hammer it out, so.
we could define it as 5 residential structures and/or commercial structures with 911 address.
What was
That
it?
way, you're not got multiple Rudy Toot, one person with a barn and something else. a boathouse and a barn isn't gonna qualify as 3 structures, because it's only gonna have one 911
Well, I
address.
think that's just
Yeah.
covered in what we put.
And
Well-
maybe you're right.
Must be a name.
Well, let's
road
just,
with
let's see what
911
the
address.
definition says, and then if not, we'll have to look at either changing the definition or,
There's not one for structure.
okay, so let's change the motion to must have 5 residential and/or commercial structures with a 911 address.
I think that'll work, because the next one says must be named road with 911 addresses. That,
I
Yeah.
think
That's a different statement.
that addresses
That's
the
different.
road, but it doesn't identify
Correct.
a structure, what
Okay.
qualifies as a
Okay.
structure, so.
that's right.
Yeah,
Y'all got that wording on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
So I second the motion if
All
you
right.
correct it to what he said most recently.
Any public discussion? You good with this? All right, awesome. Mr. Murphy, you good? You know what we're talking about?
What about,
He can
All right.
listen and work at the same time.
what about Mr. Gomez and Dana?
Well, I asked Mr.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
was getting to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, do you want to run this meeting?
No.
All right.
All 3 of you folks that came out.
You good?
Help us, thanks.
All right. All right, we got a motion by Mr. Talbot, second by Mr. King, right, or by Mr. Mack.
Mhm.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right. Let's talk about item B. Okay. Item 4, review, discussion, and recommendations of ordinances, old business. Discussion of chapter 125-4 and 124-12 regarding family partitions. I think this is where people are kind of going into dividing up land and in a roundabout way starting the minor subdivision without improvement rule. So I think we were discussing, just either eliminating family partitions completely, or did you have another recommendation, Gary?
Well, the exclusions, there's a list of exclusions here, and I'm not really, I think 5, the exclusion 5. Is 5 the family partition exclusion? I think 5 needs to be eliminated completely. And I think we need to allow for a hardship. And I think we need to probably go past this exclusion, because we somehow allow multiple addresses on one tract of property. And I think we need to get to where there needs to be 1 address per tract. And if you need 2 addresses on tract of property, it needs to be a hardship situation with an ascending or descending heir. Ascending or descending direct heir, and it needs to be reviewed annually. And other than that, there should only be 1 address per tract. Because what we're ending up doing is we're ending up with multiple houses on one piece of property that was designed, you follow what I'm talking about? We're ending up- And so in essence, you're going around the minor resub deal by cutting out a lot, then putting 2 residents on it.
Yep.
And then we talk about a family partition, but once you put a permanent structure on a family partition, you can't, it's hard to tell somebody you gotta sell that
Yep.
to somebody within the family. So I think that the family partition should be eliminated completely. I think that we ought to create a hardship for, like I said, ascending and descending direct heirs, that they can get a temporary address for
Reviewed annually.
for a movable structure that needs to be reviewed annually. And if permitting, has to come out annually, you gotta go buy an annual permit for that address, sign a new affidavit, and have them inspected. If there's some cost associated with that, then permitting needs to determine what the cost is, and we can put that, they can put that permit. But I think the only way to do this is, if you're trying to build a house for your kid, then the cost of a survey and create a legal separate, piece of property should not be such a burden that you can't do it. We got a guy here that happens to own an engineering and surveying company in the audience. If I got 3 acres of land, Derek, go ahead and say your name, please.
Yep.
Derek Murphy, Quality Engineering and Surveying.
So Derek, if I've got 3 acres and I want to cut an acre out to give to my kid, what's my cost associated with that? Direct cost to me?
$2,000 to $3,000 depending on what wood it.
That's survey, legal fees, the whole deal?
Recording fees are probably about another $500 on top of that.
So it really would cost y'all $2 or $3 grand to go out and do a survey on just to cut an acre out of something?
It depends on what it, how difficult the boundary is. Yeah, we gotta turn in the maps to the parish, they review everything, and then we get it recorded. So so like I said, probably about 2,000 minimum, 3,000 maximum, somewhere up in there. A lot of times though, some of that hardship becomes because you gotta have, from a sewer standpoint, you have 16,000 square foot of property where you don't have 32,000. You try
Right.
to put a second trailer or something for a son or a daughter or a mom or somebody right behind you. That's, a lot of times, it's not just the survey, but it's also the square footage of the property
Okay.
you're trying to survey.
But that's on a permanent structure, not a hardship. If you do a hardship.
A hardship's different, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is what you're saying, Derek, is some of these second addresses for family partitions have circumvented the square footage rules with respect to sewer.
I don't know the exact, but I think so. Yeah, you could.
So, but in essence, I mean, what we're trying to do is fix the abuses. There are abuses to the system. We've all seen them. I've seen them in my district. I think everybody's ultimately seen them in their district. I think if you talk to people in planning and listen to the stories that are told when people walk up to the window, you almost know from when they open their mouth that there are abuses to the system that are happening. So we're trying to fix it. We're trying to allow people who truly have a hardship, do what they need to do. But at the same time, I think we're trying to eliminate the abuses that occur. Because once it's granted and you allow somebody to build a house, then it's over with. It's no longer a family partition. It is now a new piece of property in the market,
Yes and no, but for family partitions, sometimes you're just allowed to have another address or you have a unimproved access, I believe, things like that. So,
Well, but what we've been seeing is people come in and they cut out, lots for their direct heirs, and then next thing you know, somebody else owns that lot, unrelated to those individuals.
that does happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mack?
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, all right, this section that we were talking about tonight, we call it a family partition. I don't really see that word written in here, but basically it's an exemption or exclusion. It's saying that the current minor subdivision ordinance or requirements doesn't apply in the cases listed here in number 5. Now, it was to my understanding that the way we're currently operating, when I say that, I'm talking about the administrative group who is authorized to approve minor subdivisions, under certain conditions. They are requiring people follow those ordinance requirements, even though it's not an actual requirement because it's excluded. So to me, by removing this section 5 of this 125-4 exclusion section, what we're trying to do is actually, set the ordinance up so that the things that we're doing, that we're currently operating, meets the actual ordinance, and that we're following our own rules.
Right.
That's the way I interpreted that. Now, what you were referring to earlier, whenever maybe somebody has a house or parcel of property and they want to let their child or close to kin have a trailer on there, to me, that's a totally separate section. They have to sign an affidavit saying that that's a family member, and we could go back and look at that later on, but if it's ever protested that there's no longer a family member in there, they've signed an affidavit, then we are authorized, to me, when I say we, I mean like the parish government is authorized to take action to ensure that the ordinance is being followed. So, and I think that there is some room where maybe, that's not a bad thing. Maybe they can't subdivide, maybe they so choose not to subdivide, they just want to allow them to live there, is maybe they're getting started in life or going through a hardship in life. And I mean, and that's a benefit, and that's a good thing, you know, to help family members out, you know. So to me, that's a separate section. I think if we take this section completely out, number 5, that it aids the current administration in following the current practice that they're actually following. And that's the way I understood it. And 2, I want to say this, and I'll try to be quiet about this, but you know as well as I know, us becoming councilmen, we've learned a lot about development and what's good development and what's bad development. And what truly may look like in the beginning a good thing turns out to be a disaster for all in the end. And I think this is probably one of the cases when you go to put 40 lots on a servitude where you don't have, authorized for utilities, and you're not authorized to maintain a road, and you're not, it's not a good place
For
to be.
anybody.
And so to me, I think it's a good move to take this completely out and start following the requirements of the minor subdivision.
Just period.
And-
If they got a hardship,
Shane, I agree with you 100%. I
Okay.
think the concern is there has been some concern addressed about being able to help people with a hardship later.
Mhm.
So I think the comments were made that we need to make sure that when we strike this, that there is some provision somewhere in the law that allows for that to happen. And I guess what I was gonna do is ask the young ladies
Well,
that,
they're not, number one, they're not denied following the current minor subdivision requirement, so if they want to subdivide, they can. And number 2, if it's a close to kin or good friend, they can always get that second address, sign the affidavit, let them live there for a certain period of time, as long as, that kind of covers you so that it's not rental property and something like that, and we can go that route, and that allows for the hardship. I think we're covered if we
well,
remove
I
this.
think what we've seen though, and I think there's been some discussion and comment from planning, and if somebody wants to comment on it, that there is, what's happening now is we're getting multiple addresses on pieces of property that houses are getting built on. I think we gotta figure out how to stop that. We gotta be sure that if a structure is built on a piece of property, it needs to reside within its own legal lot. You know what I'm talking about? We
Well,
don't need.
if you give a hardship, or a true hardship, then you don't need to necessarily give another address.
Well, I think,
Well, you need an
think,
address to get the electricity,
That's
but what
right.
I'm saying is what we can do is we can go back and look at that section where you're allowed to give the second address. I think you can give 2, so you can actually have 3 addresses, and, but it's gotta meet the criteria and sign the affidavit, it's gotta be next to
Right.
kin, and once again, I think we're covered. Now, if we wanna go back and review that,
well,
that's
I just-
totally separate from
I just
this.
think that, I think in our roundabout discussions we had, when we talked about putting this on, I think there were some people that were concerned that they might not be able to help family members in distress, and I think we need to be sure that we address that situation so that we don't end up with somebody
make sure it's written.
misinterpret what we're
in the
trying to do here in
code.
5. You understand? I think you and I both understand that in revoking 5, all we're saying is that you now have to follow the rules of the minor resub.
Right.
I think there are some people that are concerned that when you strike the family partition deal, that they're not gonna be able to help their family member, and I think we just need to reiterate that that's
I
still
agree.
gonna be available. That's
Well,
all.
you
That's
take
all.
the
is-
line,
That is
yeah.
still definitely gonna be available.
Yeah.
Well, I agree
yeah.
with that, I just think that's the
Well,
concern.
is there another section that deals with that?
With the addressing,
Yeah, well, what Shane's saying, that there's a hardship clause.
you know,
It's not really a hardship, but there is,
You want-
come on up,
Come on up,
David. It
David.
does talk about, how you can apply for
Yeah,
a second
how
address.
we would
but-
do it? Is it being done now? What would
Danny,
we
you
need?
want to, well, go ahead, Tracy. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Dana LeMay with the Livingston Parish Planning Department. So our process to get a multiple address, they come into our office, we have a multiple address packet. In that packet, there's an affidavit that we're required to get notarized. And there's also a list of documentation we have to have, the current utility bills for the first address that's there to show that the relationship that that person's living at that first address. A birth certificate to show relationship between the person holding the first address and the child that's wanting to get a second address. Also, the same thing with applying for a first address, the deed and the map to the property. Once we get all those items together, we will give them a second address. Now, we do check to make sure, when we give second addresses, we follow by the minor resub ordinance. So we still make sure that even though they're getting a second address, each structure, there's enough property there for 2 structures. So we still make sure that there's at least 12,000 square feet for each structure before we give a multiple address. And, basically we still follow by the setbacks. We make sure they still can meet by the setbacks before we'll give an approval for an address. So we still kind of follow those ordinances, even though we're just giving the address and we're not subdividing the property.
Okay, so like my question to this would be, is there a follow-up? I mean, if 5 years
So-
later, 10 years later, is there a way to keep from renting
Yes.
that property?
That affidavit, when
Uh-huh.
they go next door to the permit office to get their address, they put a hold on that address. So if they ever go back to get another permit, they'll show there's a hold on this, they'll send them back to our office. If that's not the same person on the affidavit trying to get an address, we have to contact the property owner, and if they're trying to rent it out, we make them get with a surveyor and subdivide it out before they can get another permit for that address if it's not for family.
I mean, I think that, in talking to her earlier, I think it's covered. I just think I was reiterating in the discussion.
I
that-
got you.
That there were some people in the administration who were concerned that if we eliminated family partition, that we would put a hardship on people when they were trying to get a permit for their kids. I just think we need to make sure that that's available. That was the reason for my discussion.
And we,
Yeah,
and we
I
also
absolutely
give them the
agree.
option, say if you have more than one child, if one child moves out, we will allow the second child to keep that address. We just make them update the affidavit with the new name and birth certificate.
Okay.
So I
So,
think,
yeah.
I think by eliminating 5, we're good in the fact that the administration is comfortable that they can still help family members that need, access to their family's property.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Dana.
so effectively, we're not getting rid of a family partition. We're getting rid of 5. The family petition can be done no matter what, as long as they follow
It's
those
not-
rules.
We're eliminating the family partition, but we're still allowing for a second address for a family
family
member
member,
if you have
if a
a
hardship.
reason
Okay,
that you can
yeah.
justify it.
All right,
So you're wanting the hardship section in number 5?
No, I think we're covered. I
just
think
get
we're
rid of
covered.
5 and we'll be
I think if we
okay.
get rid of 5, I just wanted to
Strike
reiterate
5.
that
Okay,
we're gonna,
so
I think
strike.
the move, the deal is strike 5 and then everybody has to move within the minor resub unless,
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. King.
Shane, you want to second it? You want me to second it? I'll second it. I'll
Too
second it.
late. Yes.
Okay,
What
so
you got?
Morgan, and she might have to clarify this, but when I spoke with, Mr. Sam and Natalie last week, there's a section in the mobile home ordinance that y'all do not have in front of y'all that says, however, if a landowner makes application with the planning department and meets the requirement of the affidavit attached to the ordinance from which this article is derived and executed, then placement of 3 mobile homes on the same tract of land, excluding the homestead, will be permitted by the planning department. 2 of the placements of the mobile home park exception shall be lineal descendants of the landowner, and 1 of the placements of the mobile home park exception may be a family member or friendly acquaintance.
So I think that's what we were just referring to.
Yeah, but that gives you 4 addresses on one piece of property.
Yeah.
I thought it was a total of 3.
It's
And they
4.
can do-
It's,
homestead, sending to and friends.
so it's 4. And that's in the mobile home park
I
section.
think that's something to talk about later.
I think we probably need to look at addressing that because I think
Put that
you're
on the
getting,
agenda. I think you're right.
you end up with many,
Oh, I
we
mean,
changed the mobile home ordinance to try to eliminate many mobile home parks.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's
ultimately,
just allowing
So
it.
you
And
want to
that-
handle that on a separate
we'll
issue?
just look at that,
Tuesday.
we'll look at that next Tuesday. We can all read it and be sure that what we know we're doing.
All right, separately from this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I don't think we need to muddy the water. I think it's important that we eliminate 5 or whatever that is.
I agree.
Yeah,
Motion?
Motion second.
Okay, motion by Mr. King, second by Mr. Talbot. Any discussion from the audience? Good, good. Derek's order's fine. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Anything else? Other business, item 5.
We're good right now.
yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. We got nothing else?
I
Motion
don't have
to,
anything else.
Anybody?
Has Gravity 5 met on our, on,
you know, no,
okay.
but.
I just was
Like,
curious.
the short answer, no. But I
Okay.
mean, but they gonna bring it, they're gonna take it up.
I just
believe
was
me.
curious. I mean, I just was
We're not
curious.
Look, I
pushing
wanna
them, I
appreciate,
just
I wanna
think it's-
appreciate y'all coming, you know, your time. Look, I know these meetings can be humdrum sometimes, but I do appreciate, you know, people from the public do come.
We
And
need
look,
input.
And I do, if you're watching, if you happen to catch this on TV, I would, you know, we're welcome anyone to come and discuss anything that's on the agenda item, or on the item for, on the agenda, or if you just wanna put something on the agenda, we'll talk about it, and we'll put it on there and discuss it. So, I do appreciate y'all showing up, and so, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
There it is for Shane. Motion by Mr. Mack, second by Mr. Tower. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Matt.